Okay, so we left off halfway down the left column of page 54, where we went to the dominant 7 chord. Now we're going to look at the next scale degree, which would be the 6th chord. So in our C major scale, if we start with A, this is the 6th chord, we're going to go A, C, E, and G. Okay? This is a minor 3rd and a minor 7th above A, if we look at the A major scale. So we're going to use the shortcut A minor 7, which is the 6, minor 7. Again, almost every situation I've been in musically, if presented with a 6th chord and it's minor, if I throw the minor 7 note in there, it almost always works. Beautiful thing. Same as the 2 chord. In fact, I've gotten to where I have to kind of remind myself to do a straight minor chord when the minor chord is really needed. Because my hands will instinctively go to the minor 7 as a substitution. Now, let me talk about the 7th for a minute, but we're going down to the next part of the diagram. The 7th is going to be B, D, F, and A. Now, this one's a little different because this is the first time we've had not just a tritone, but also the 5th is not perfect. The perfect 5th above B would be F sharp. So now we've got a minor 3rd, flat 3rd, a minor 5th. That's a diminished triad, which in Module 8 we found out the 7th scale degree is diminished. But now we've got this A natural as part of the C major scale to get our 4-note chord. This is a half diminished 7, right? So here's our B, half diminished 7, boom, 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 which we see bottom left of page 54. Now, in diatonic music, this chord is rarely used, honestly. We usually use 1 through 6 all day till the cows come home. If it's going to stay major scale, a lot of times this chord isn't used because the tension that it creates, if you remember from just the module we just finished in talking about this, and the module before that, 14 and 15, this kind of tension has a tendency to want to resolve itself towards a different scale than the scale that it's a part of here. So by putting this B, D, F, A chord combination around these other 6 chord combinations we've been given, sometimes it kind of sticks out like a sore thumb. It doesn't seem to mesh if we're going to stay there. However, it's an awesome chord to set up changing the tonal center to something else. It's killer for that because it actually starts to imply a different scale, a different tonal center, okay? But in diatonic-oriented music, many, many times what we'll do is rather than play a B diminished 7 chord, what we'll do in the key of C, we'll take that 5 chord, the G major chord, and we'll put a B in the bass. Okay, in terms of chords. So this would be the 5 chord, but with the 7 on the bottom. And this lets us do things like a song that starts off on the 1 chord, and then the bass goes down a half step. Boom. Like if we had the C chord, and then we wanted to make the bass kind of go down, and go down, and go down, like a descending bass line. This might be the 7th scale degree, but we rarely ever hear anybody do a diminished 7th there. It's just not as musically conducive to staying in the tonal center of C. So this is very commonly used as a 7th scale degree of let the 5 chord, which has 2 of the same notes, right? Because the G chord is G, B, and D. And let that jump in. And maybe this could be an A minor 7, or even more, it could be sometimes an F over A, either way. This is kind of prelude to Music Theory 3 when we start talking about chord function and why the chords work the way they do, why they push us and pull us in the way that they are. You know, and then we'll typically have a straight G and a straight F. But to get that descending bass line thing, many times the diminished 7 chord here is not going to fly. Now, in any key, ever, if you try to create 4-note chords with whatever that scale is, whether it's E flat or G flat or H7, wait, there's no H, just kidding, just seeing if you're listening. Doesn't matter what scale we go to, the same pattern will work. The 1 chord will be a major 7, the 2, the 3, and the 6 will be minor 7s. The 5 is always going to be a dominant 7, and the 7 will always be this half diminished 7. Every single time. And it's because we're based on a whole half, whole half system, and we're building that on that same formula. If we change the scale, if we change the formula, if we're not doing major scale, then this completely breaks down into some other pattern based on what that formula is. Does what I just said make sense? It's all based on that whole half, whole half. This is a huge reason why we've gone this deep without ever really talking about other scales. Okay? We totally get into them in Music Theory 3 with the context of how we've built to this point of what the 4-note chords are, how this one becomes the 6, and so forth, and the definitions of all these terms. Then we start applying all of this knowledge to other scales. Okay? So we get blues scales, we get different kinds of minor, and so forth. So that's the progression of where we're heading with this music theory course, so that ultimately I think you'll have more tools to create rather than patterns and shapes to recreate someone else's thing. That's the goal. So, is there any questions on this? Let me reiterate one more time. Not all of these variations work, but if you're playing in your worship team and you start looking through the songs and you realize, oh, the tonal center here is E, because there's a lot of guitar music and E is a really handy chord to get into, and the 5 of that is B and the 2 is this F sharp minor. Start looking at adding in F sharp minor 7. Look at adding in on the 6th chord a minor 7. Look at adding a major 7 once in a while, adding some other notes, and seeing how that's going to leaven the bread and spice up your stew a little bit as you guys continue to move forward in the calling that God's given you, making music in His name. Amen? Thank you so much for bearing with. I know it was a really short module, but this is where we're going through. Urge you to consider taking Music Theory 3, which we'll be shooting later in the year. We're hoping for April or May. And yeah, that's it.